Deep in the heart of the Amazon rainforest lies a mystery that has captivated the world for centuries. For years, explorers and archaeologists have searched for evidence of a lost civilization that once thrived in these dense jungles, leaving behind monumental structures and enigmatic artifacts that hint of a culture of great sophistication and power. And now, after years of speculation and excavation, something very important has been discovered. Recent findings have shed new light on the Kasarabe culture, a civilization that existed from 500 to 1400 CE and built vast cities with big buildings, platforms, and pyramids. According to Hancock, these civilizations built enormous earthworks and pyramids that are scattered throughout the jungle, and these pyramids might be far bigger than Egyptian pyramids. But what happened to them? Theories abound, with some suggesting a big drought and others smallpox brought by Spaniards. However, one thing is clear. This discovery is one of the most amazing things we have seen to suggest that there were lots of people living in the Amazon rainforest a long time ago, and that some parts of it were like cities even before we started recording history. It's a glimpse into a lost world that has the power to change our understanding of the Amazon and its history forever. The Amazon rainforest is a vast and dense tropical forest that covers much of the Amazon basin in South America, spanning across 9 countries including Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. It is the largest rainforest in the world and is often referred to as the lungs of the planet due to its crucial role in producing oxygen and regulating the global climate. Recently, there has been a surprising discovery that ancient cities did exist in the Amazon, even though it has been difficult to find them in the thick, faraway forests. However, a new technology called LiDAR has helped change the situation. By using this technology from a helicopter high up in the sky, scientists were able to digitally remove the trees and identify the ruins of a big city that was left abandoned about 600 years ago. The ruins were found near the Llanos de Mojos in the Bolivian Amazon. So new findings show us very clearly that the Kasarabe culture, which existed from 500 to 1400 CE, had a strong city with big buildings like platforms and pyramids. They also had raised roads that connected smaller settlements, kind of like suburbs, that spread out over many miles of land. The land was managed by a big system of water control, with places to store water and canals to move it around. This discovery, which was talked about in the journal Nature, is one of the most amazing things we have seen to suggest that there were lots of people living in the Amazon rainforest a long time ago, and that some parts of it were like cities even before we started recording history. Most people know more about the Maya than they do about the Kasarabe. So who were the Kasarabe? Over the last 10 years, archaeologists have learned that the Kasarabe people were different from other cultures, and that they probably lived in a place with lots of floods every year. The area where they lived was probably a savanna or grassland with forests near the rivers. It was not like the big unbroken forests that we see in the area now. There are some cultures in the Andes Mountains that also built big platforms, mounds, and temples, but these places are not very far from the Amazon. Even though they are close by, Heiko Prumers thinks that people from the Andes did not create the cities in the Amazon. He says that we know a lot about the Andes, and we've never seen any cities like the ones in the Amazon there. The cities in the Amazon are special and different from other places. We don't know what happened to the Kasarabe people and their cities, but we do know that they left the cities in the area around the year 1400 before Europeans came to the Amazon. Heiko Prumers thinks that a big drought may have caused them to leave. His team had found really big places where the Kasarabe could store water, even though the Amazon usually gets a lot of rain. Even though we don't know how it ended, the Kasarabe culture teaches us something important. It shows that the Amazon forest wasn't always a big empty place that nobody lived in. In fact, there were people living there and building big cities a long time ago. This is different from what we used to think, that the Amazon was always just a big, unbroken forest. For many years, Heckenberger has studied the Xingu region in Brazil. He has found dozens of places there that he calls garden cities. These cities have homes, plazas, and walls made from palisades. Even though they don't have big monuments like the ones in Bolivia, they were still connected by roads, bridges, and canals. They were also built in a way that changed the environment around them, creating fields, fish farms, and other things. This culture was different from the one in Bolivia because it was made up of smaller communities instead of one big city. It's interesting to note that Fawcett disappeared while looking for the lost city of Z in the same region. But 13,000 years ago, the Amazon rainforest was a diverse and abundant environment with a wide variety of plant and animal species that provided for the needs of the people who lived there. These early Amazonians were hunter-gatherers who relied on forest for food and resources, but they also practiced agriculture on a small scale, growing crops such as manioc, maize, and squash. One of the most important aspects of the culture of these early Amazonians was their relationship with the environment. They had a deep understanding of the rainforest and its resources, and they developed a sustainable way of life that allowed them to live in harmony with their surroundings. For example, they practiced shifting cultivation, clearing small areas of land to plant crops and then moving on to a new area once the soil was exhausted. This technique allowed them to cultivate crops without causing lasting damage to the rainforest. The early Amazonians also had a rich spiritual life, and their beliefs were intertwined with the natural world. They believed that the rainforest was inhabited by spirits, and they had rituals and ceremonies to honor these spirits and ask for their blessings. They also had a deep respect for animals and plants, viewing them as kin and treating them with reverence. In terms of technology, the early Amazonians were skilled craftsmen who made use of the resources around them. They made tools and weapons from stone, bone, and wood and used them for hunting, fishing, and other activities. They also developed sophisticated pottery techniques, producing intricately decorated vessels that were used for cooking, storage, and ritual purposes. According to the studies, the social structure of early Amazonian communities was based on kinship ties, with extended families living together in small villages. These communities were often organized around a central plaza where ceremonies and gatherings took place. Women played an important role in these communities, both in terms of subsistence activities such as farming and gathering, as well as in spiritual and social roles. Furthermore, studies have shown that 10,000 years ago, humans in the Amazon were primarily hunter-gatherers who relied on the forest and rivers for food and resources. They hunted animals such as peccaries, tapirs, and deer using spears, traps, and bows and arrows. Fishing was also an essential part of their diet, and they used nets, hooks, and harpoons to catch fish in the rivers and streams. In addition to hunting and fishing, they gathered wild fruits, nuts, and berries from the forest, and some groups practiced slash-and-burn agriculture to cultivate small plots of land for crops such as maize, cassava, and squash. One of the most distinctive features of the Amazonian hunter-gatherers was their knowledge of the forest and its resources. They had an intimate understanding of the flora and fauna, knowing which plants were edible or medicinal and which could be used for building or making tools. They also had sophisticated techniques for navigating the forests and rivers, using landmarks, stars, and currents to find their way. Socially, these groups were often organized into small bands or tribes of extended families who moved around the forest in search of food and resources. They had a deep spiritual connection to the natural world and believed in spirits that inhabited the forest, rivers, and animals. Shamanism played an essential role in their culture, and shamans used hallucinogenic plants to enter altered states of consciousness and communicate with the spirit world. Despite their seemingly simple lifestyle, these hunter-gatherers had developed complex social and cultural traditions. They had distinctive art and music, often using natural materials such as clay, wood, and animal bones to make intricate carvings, sculptures, and musical instruments. They also had sophisticated systems of oral tradition, passing down stories, myths, and histories from generation to generation through song, dance, and storytelling. Moreover, new findings from experts shed more light on how people lived in the Amazon 5,000 years ago. They discovered during this time the early Amazonians had started using more advanced methods for farming, such as creating raised fields and irrigation canals. They also grew crops like beans, corn, and peppers. Furthermore, they continued to practice shifting cultivation, but also developed techniques such as agroforestry, in which crops were grown in association with trees and other vegetation, providing multiple benefits for the ecosystem. They had a deep respect for the animals and plants, viewing them as kin and treating them with reverence. In terms of technology, the early Amazonians continued to be skilled craftsmen who made use of the resources around them. They also continued to develop sophisticated pottery techniques, producing intricately decorated vessels that were used for cooking, storage, and ritual purposes. The social structure of early Amazonian communities continued to be based on kinship ties, with extended families living together in small villages. However, by this time, some communities had developed more complex political systems, with leaders and elites who held power and organized collective activities such as trade and warfare. These societies were also characterized by greater specialization of labor, as some individuals became skilled in particular crafts or trades. In addition, Graham Hancock is a British author and journalist who is known for his works on ancient civilizations and the role of consciousness in human history. Hancock has a unique perspective on the recent discovery of a large city in the Amazon, as it confirms some of the ideas that he's been exploring in his books for years. The Amazon is a colossal mystery, and it's one of the subjects that I explore in depth in America before, he said. Hancock has long argued that there was a civilization in the Amazon that was far more advanced than previously believed. He argues that this civilization, which he refers to as the lost civilization of the Amazon, was responsible for the construction of enormous earthworks and pyramids that are scattered throughout the jungle. Hancock sees the discovery of the city as a turning point in the study of ancient civilizations. He argues that the city shows that the Amazon was not the unspoiled wilderness that we once thought it was, but was in fact home to a highly advanced civilization that was able to manipulate and shape the environment to meet their needs. Hancock stated that other Europeans who went to the Amazon 100 years later could not find these cities and dismissed them as a fantasy. The cities were deserted within 50 years after the Spaniards brought smallpox, which devastated the local population. As the clearances of the Amazon have proceeded, the traces of those cities have emerged. The latest evidence suggests that the Amazon had a possible total population of over 20 million people.